We're here on case 2014 M013332, State of Florida versus Michael Anthony Hoffman. One thing I wanted to ask you, Mr. Friday, is that, I don't know if you looked at the calendar, is that the correct spelling of your client's first name?
M-I-C-H-A-L-E.
Okay.
Yes, sir, it's a non-spelling, that is correct.
We're here on the defendant's verified motion to dismiss. Mr. Friday, do you intend to proceed first?
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, the statement I've discussed what we decided to do. There are two cameras that were recording this event. At a certain time, one camera cut off, and there was a consistent chain through it. One camera is always recording. I'm going to play the cameras in the order they're recording and cutting one to the other for better, because it shows better the state's agreed that they will object and interrupt if they feel that cutting in the should be there.
Okay, that's the state's position.
Yes, sir.
And also for the record, we had a discussion at sidebar, with counsel for both parties, and there's no issue with regard to authentication of the video, correct?
No, Your Honor, there's not any issue.
Okay. All right, very good. You go ahead and proceed, sir.
Your Honor, we've also asked the court to take judicial notice of JAA rules and regulations. May I put it on?
Yes, sir.
They are cited widely throughout both parties, and then the law in motion. They are the rules and regulations of the public entity of the state of Florida.
Very well. State agrees, I assume.
Yes, sir. I know.
All right, everybody. Today's date is August the 12th.
I'm getting audio.
This is FPG,
Hold back up, Your Honor.
heading to the Jacksonville International Airport. All right, everybody. Today's date is August the 12th. This is FPG, heading to the Jacksonville International Airport to do a follow-up First Amendment test. Last week, I came out and they said I was parked illegally, said I was a distraction. So, with some of the advice of some of my subscribers, they recommended I remove the element of the parked vehicle. So, I've done just that. So, my vehicle is safely parked away. We're going to go down here and see if we're allowed to execute our constitutional First Amendment right. Freedom of speech.
Your Honor? Your Honor? I don't know how much longer it is of the defendant walking up the road. We can certainly concede he's walking unobstructed if this is going to go over another 10
I was just thinking,
minutes.
I need to
Well,
watch this
if
portion.
the state will concede that at all times he was moving in a particular direction, would we have to fast forward?
Right, but just more of this, I would happily concede. It's in evidence under the court to review it if it becomes an issue down the road.
Your Honor, just so the state's clear, so we're clear on this, on the stipulation here, the point is, Mr. Hoffman was not just standing there, he was moving in a particular direction at all times.
I'm familiar with the area, and I don't know who it is, because the case doesn't show who it is, but whoever it is who's filming this is moving forward, it appears to me, toward the airport.
How you doing, officers? Doing well. Your name, officer? And your badge number, ma'am? I appreciate that, ma'am. How you doing, Officer Salinas? Your badge number once again, sir? I appreciate that, sir. How can I help you today? Am I being detained? At this time, I'd like not to answer any questions.
This time I'm going to inform you that this is Jackson Litigation Authority private property. And right now at this time you're trespassing unless you have permission from the Jackson Litigation Authority to be here and the External Affairs Division. And if you give you time to leave, if you do not, then you will be charged with trespassing. So you have time to leave.
I appreciate that. I appreciate you verbalizing that you're going to give me time, and I thank you for that. May I make a statement? Okay. I'm a licensed fraud investigator. I'm sure you already know that because when you walked up to me, you identified me as Mr. Hoffman, so you obviously know who I am. I've been doing investigations for over 14 years. This is not private property. It is owned by a corporation, but is owned ultimately by the public. It is granted public access. It has been case law deemed by the Supreme Court that by it being granted public access, and this being public access way, I have a legal and a constitutional right to stand here. I don't want to challenge your authority. That's not my intent here. Obviously, I feel I have a constitutional right. I feel I've clearly articulated that right, and I'm asking you to address what I've said and the legality of what I said.
You're welcome to address that. However, it's been put out in writing for our lieutenant that that's how it's supposed to handle this situation. This is Jackson Litigation Authority private property. You're being asked to leave and not voluntarily being told that you're trespassing.
And may I ask why I'm asking you to leave? What is it about my conduct that has caused an official law enforcement authority to ask me to remove myself from public property? May I ask what I've done to do?
Jackson Litigation Authority private property. Okay. You have to go through our External Affairs and get permission to stand on the side of the road and protest.
Right.
Everyone will be signed.
Is this not public property where I'm standing right here? This is not public property. Okay. Then I'd ask you at this time to go ahead and write me a trespassing. And if I fail to leave, what's going to happen? Okay. I understand that. I'm going to verbalize this now. I've never been arrested. I don't want to be arrested. I'm scared of being arrested. But again, I feel I have a constitutional right to be here, and I'm going to peacefully continue to stand here. I ask that if you choose to arrest me, please verbalize that. I will lay down my camera. I will lay down my signs. I will peacefully put my hands behind my back, and I ask you not to treat me roughly. That's all I ask. Okay.
As I said before, and I'll say again.
Okay.
We've been instructed to tell you that you're trespassing on private property. You have the right to leave now, we'll give you time to leave. If you refuse to leave, then you'll be placed
Okay. I appreciate your professionalism, and I thank you. As you can see by my hand shaking here, I'm rather nervous, so. So just for clarification, if you don't mind me just clarifying. Officer Salinas, while she's discussing that, may I?
Your Honor, I just wanted to make that clear for the court. The part that it didn't fast forwarded to was not our understanding of when he had just stopped walking, which is kind of what I was asking for it to be fast forward to the point where he stopped walking. He'd actually been there, standing there for a little bit of time prior to the police coming up. So obviously, for the sake of time, I wanted to be fast forward so we didn't have to just watch him walking for minutes on end. Obviously, the video is an evidence, and so the court can review that. I just didn't want it to be held against me at a later time that I agreed that where he stopped, he was moving constantly up until that point, because it's my understanding that he actually stopped there a little bit before Mr. Friday had stopped the video.
Okay, do you agree with that, Mr.
No, Your Honor, I do not.
Okay, well then let's go back and play the video.
I stopped this video at 1 minute and 50 seconds. I'll go back and play the prior video from as far back as the state wants me to go.
I just want to go from the point where he stops
All right,
walking.
everybody?
Did you find the place he stopped?
I'm not working on it, Your Honor. There's a brief stop here, Your Honor, and if you review the other video that was not played, the Sunny Cam 1, you will actually hear the Sunny Cam 1 turn on and see video hit, basically the video of the same thing, this video of all standing still, and then he begins moving.
I'm sorry?
He's still walking here?
It doesn't appear to me he's still walking. Looks like it's the same exact spot that you had fast forwarded to previously.
We'll have to see the sign too far away. That works.
All right, we just had our first Jacksonville police vehicle go by. It is 3:22 p.m. What's up? Yeah, I just got out here about 10 minutes ago. All right, cool. You take the dog out? point back. Here we go.
John, it's 6 3, I'm going to stop this video at this time, we'll get back to 4 minutes and 50 seconds, so we're going to do it like Chris, prior to getting
I don't, obviously, I asked me to remove myself from public property. May I ask what I've done to,
You will be placed under arrest for trespassing.
well, Officer Salinas, while she's discussing that, may I ask you some questions? A person that was to walk through here, is that okay? A person just walking through here, is that unlawful? And is it known at this time I do not have a destination? Do you know at this time I do not have a destination? So it would be okay if someone was just to walk through here without a sign, that's okay? Yeah. But you don't know if I have business conduct at the airport. I don't choose to answer questions at this time. But you don't know if I have business conduct at the airport or not. Okay. Sergeant Wall, how you doing, sir?
All right, Mr. Hoffman, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, sir.
Okay, I think you've already been informed. I got a little paperwork to get you here. This is an application for doing what you would like to do. It's through the airport authority.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we have certain procedures in the airport they do. If you want them to protest or pull signs like you're doing, you have to get the permission of the airport authority because you are on private property. Okay? So I'd like to hand that to you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I appreciate it, Sergeant. I'd like to just verbalize I'm not protesting. That is not what I'm doing.
If you can't stand on the airport's property and do signs like this, okay?
Airport public property, but okay.
This is private property.
Yes, sir.
Okay? Statute 810.09.
Which is what, sir?
Okay, trespass. I'll let you look that up because you seem to be very versed in everything.
Well, I don't know what that is, but I appreciate that.
Okay. So here's what we're doing is you can't come into a conveyance or corporate purpose or anything like that, okay? Enclosed or not. So what we're gonna do, I don't know how you got here, I don't see your vehicle here today. Did you park it close by or I guess you're not gonna answer that. If you have somebody that's coming to pick you up or whatever, but you're not gonna make contact with them, I'm gonna give you a few minutes. I think she's already told you you're trespassing.
Yes, sir, she did.
Okay, so you are trespassing, and we'll give you a few minutes to make arrangements for somebody to come pick you up, okay? And, okay, fair enough?
I appreciate that, Sergeant. I'd like to articulate, like I did to this officer here, I appreciate your professionalism so far. I ask that again, if you are going to arrest me, that you just verbalize that. I will very calmly place my camera down, my signs down. I will place my hands behind my back. I will not resist in any manner whatsoever, and I ask that you just treat me with respect.
Okay, please understand, we're not here to arrest you. We're here to ask you to cease what you're doing and go ahead and move off of the property. That's what we're asking you to do. I'm gonna give you an opportunity to do that, so go ahead and make your arrangements, okay?
All right, I have to acknowledge what you just said. I understand what you said, you're not here to arrest me, but you're here giving me an unlawful order. And in my opinion, I'm not an attorney, I am, and I've researched this, I am on public property. JEA is a corporation owned ultimately by the public. This is a public right-of-way, which you are on the record, sir, stating this is a public right-of-way. Last time we spoke, sir, you said I was a safety hazard. I researched that, and I talked to my attorney, and it's clearly untrue. And again, I'm not here to argue with you, Sergeant. I'm not here to make your people's job difficult.
You're on private property. I've already told you.
Yes, sir.
I just told you that you are trespassing. I didn't tell you that the other day. Today I'm telling you you're trespassing. I'm working with you as best I can.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Two occasions.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So go ahead and make your arrangements to leave. I'm asking you to leave.
Okay.
We will take other actions if needed.
All right.
Okay?
I'm asking you to give me 5 minutes. I'm asking you 5 minutes. I'm going to call my attorney. Is that okay? All right. All right, everybody. I'm calling my attorney right now. Yes, this is Mike Hoffman. George Faust is my attorney. I'm currently at Jacksonville National Airport. I think I'm about to be arrested. Is there any way I can speak to him? Tom, I'm standing on the airport. What they're saying is airport public property. I'm right next to the big sign. I'm on public property. It's a public right-of-way. I'm not in the road. I'm on public property. I'm about 10 feet from the road. I'm holding two signs. One says Police State. The other one says F, underline, question mark, K, the TSA. They're going to arrest me. They said they trespassed me. They said they're giving me time to leave. I told them I'm going to stand fast. I have a constitutional right here. This is public property. It's not private. It's owned by a corporation by the airport, but ultimately it's public property. I have a legal and constitutional right to be here. I asked them if they were going to arrest me to please verbalize that. I would lay my camera down, I would put my arms behind my back, and I would not resist. But they're going to arrest me. So I'm calling you to, I guess, seek your advice and to ask you what to do. All right. In your legal opinion, do you agree with my research that I am on public road? I am standing the real electronic sign on the entranceway to the airport. I'm not up on the airport. I'm way down at the entrance. You come over the little bridge, the huge sign right there. I'm about 6 to 8 feet off the roadway in the grass, right by the poles. Look, there's 3 of them here. The sergeant was out here. I've been out here a couple other times. I've had contact with them. They know who I am. They came up. They addressed me by name. They illegally ran my vehicle last time here through David. I've got that on video. I'm going to follow suit against that when I get time. But they're going to arrest me. They're here. They're giving me time to call you. They're being polite. They're I've got all that on video. They're going to trespass me. The reason they're going to arrest me is trespassing. They did warn me. They did warn me. But they warned me when they came up. She says, you're warned, you're trespassing, you're warning. But her warning is invalid and unlawful. Yeah, I'm on public property. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm on public property. So then, I need you to do me a favor. I'm going to be arrested. George has my wife's number and all that, or a bail bondsman. I don't have a bail bondsman. He lined one up for me. I'm going to need a bail bondsman. I'm going to need to be bailed out. I'm not in a position to write it down. The officer's standing right next to me. I got a camera in one hand. I got a phone in the other. All right. I guess I'll be in touch then. Thank you. Bye. That's my turn. I'm going to call my wife now and let her know if that's okay. If it's okay. Then I'm going to jail. Ma'am, I'm not going to leave. I don't want to go to jail. I'm not going to arrest it. Because I'm here constitutionally, ma'am. I'm here constitutionally. Don't you understand? Just, if you can, I don't know if you can for a moment, just step aside from your LEO position. Do you understand where I'm coming from? I'm a good citizen. I'm a good citizen. I'm not harming anything. It is, in my opinion, and also your duty to honor your oath. And your oath says you'll defend the Constitution. I have a constitutional right to be here. I'm not breaking any laws. You want to take my freedom away because I'm standing here. I guess then our difference, you know what, I can't debate that. You're right, you've been polite about it. I know, but I guess where we differ is, we differ on if this is private or public. I guess that's where we differ, because we can't agree on that difference. We're not going to be able. All right. Let me make and I'm not trying to draw this out. You have a lot of people here. I'm not trying to take up your time. It can't be private. It can't be owned by a private person. This is a Jacksonville International Airport. It is an authority. It is a public authority. It's owned by... Okay. Okay. And I don't want to debate it anymore. I just asked her before she came up, I called my wife. I'm just going to say I'm going to jail and that's it. All right, I spoke to my attorney. I just want to let her know I'm going to jail. If that's okay.
You got about another minute.
Yes, I'll do it right here in front of you, Sarge. I'm just doing it right here in front of you. I'm just going to call and tell her, she's going to be worried and upset. hey, I'm going to jail, so. All right, I'll call you later. Bye.
So, go ahead and turn the camera off.
All right.
Yeah. Turn it off.
I did not turn it off.
Okay, I don't know how to turn it off, but I'm just gonna let the battery run out. So if you wanna save what you got there, battery, it's immaterial to me, you can turn it off.
All right, I'm going to turn the camera off this time to preserve the evidence.
Okay. It's fine.
We differ when this is private or public. I guess that's where we differ, because we can't agree on that. I did not turn it off.
Okay, I don't know how to turn it off, but I'm just gonna let the battery run out. So if you wanna save what you got there, battery, it's immaterial to me, you can turn it off.
All right, I'm going to turn the camera off this time to preserve the evidence.
Okay, that's fine. Now what about the two on your chest there? We'll go ahead and remove those. We wanna make sure to remove easily.
I'm sorry, I should have told you, I apologize. I have no weapons on me, I mean you guys no harm.
Okay,
I got no weapons.
pull these off right here. Those cameras. Take these.
I'm going to leave these on you, I don't consent to any searches or seizures.
You don't have to, we're gonna search you.
I understand that, I don't consent to any searches or
Officer,
seizures.
you understand that?
I understand that. You tell me what to
Go ahead and
do.
turn around if you will, put your hands on. Give it a minute. Double lock and door, the other side of the window.
Do they have to be so tight?
No, what we're gonna do is we'll start your
Okay, yes, sir, yes, sir. I'm not resisting, okay, guys? That cuffs you everyone pretty tight.
Okay, we'll go. And then we'll double lock it after. Step it real.
Yes, sir. Yeah, that's better. No weapons, I don't know if I have coins or anything in my pocket, No, sir, no weapons. I'm not sure. I don't have any knives, no weapons.
We'll go ahead and take these off.
Again, I don't consent to any seizures or searches.
Understand?
Okay.
You do know you're under arrest.
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay.
And that's what I'm under arrest for.
Trespass.
Okay, thank you.
After being warned. Do you have a button here to turn these off?
No, sir.
Can we leave them on?
Yes, sir.
Okay, because you're not gonna give them back right now.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. We'll find out.
Again, I have no weapons, no problem, I consent to no searches.
From this point forward, the camera does continue to capture snatches of audio, but nothing that I think is pertinent or relevant to the proceedings unless the state judge.
State degree?
State pretty good.
All right, and that's the end of the video, I assume.
That's the end of the video, Your Honor. There's actually the rest of that section as well as the third body cam do pick up some audio, but I don't think it's anything that's necessarily relevant.
All right, the state degrees, we'll go.
State's going to use the video, so I'm going to do it.
I don't think we're gonna use it, but if you want to keep it queued up just in case you need it, that's fine.
Okay. Brian, do you have any witnesses?
Your Honor, I have no witnesses. I think the video speaks for itself. We're prepared for the state to present their.
Okay, very good. State have witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor.
You can call your first witness.
Sergeant Jimmy Wall.
Okay. All right, you could come forward, please, and be sworn.
Just to make a report, Mr. Wall, his testimony, Officer Kruger, I believe, may also be called to testify. We have to know the role as her for his testimony.
Okay. Officer, if you just step outside,
Okay.
and we'll call you back in when it's your turn to testify.
Thank you, John.
My name is Jimmy Wall
And where are you employed?
with Jacksonville Aviation Authority Police Department.
And how long have you been employed with them?
19 and a half years.
And were you present on the day the video that was shown just now in court? Were you present that day?
Yes, ma'am.
And can you tell me what happened when you arrived with the defendant here? I know that we saw in the video what happened. I just want a very quick account from you. What happened when you arrived?
Can I back up to as I was approaching, where I observed the vehicle sitting?
Yes.
I saw where the vehicles were sitting, and as I approached, I got out, looked at my surroundings, and then approached the officers and the defendant, and acknowledged him, provided him some paperwork, and again, like you said, the video speaks for itself.
And what paperwork was it that you provided?
It was an application that the Aviation Authority requires for people or companies that want to come up and solicit, demonstrate, or make any types of statements. They have an application process that they fill out, and it's provided to the Aviation Authority, and they get approval or they don't get approval.
Your Honor, if I may, I have a copy. I'd like to verify with him that this in fact was what he gave to the defendant.
Mr. Frank, have you seen?
I think I know what it is.
I didn't find anything in the copy that you gave me. It's in appendix.
Yes, that's it.
Sergeant Wall, would you please describe the procedure if somebody wishes to submit an application like the one you made with the defendant?
Well, again, the procedure is to fill the paperwork out, return it to the Jacksonville Aviation Authority. It goes through the process there, and then they notify the individual applying if they can do what they're requesting to do or not. And there's also locations provided for them to do that at the airport.
And somebody would use this application for what purpose? Describe what this application is for and what it requires.
To give them access to the airport to whether they're demonstrating, soliciting, or again, trying to make their cause known. It allows them permission or denial to do so. And if it is permitted, the Aviation Authority has designated areas at the airport for this purpose.
And to your knowledge, is there anything through the application process that would restrict or deny an application based on politics, religion, anything that you're aware of?
No.
And the day that, the video that we watched that's in question, when you approached the defendant, the property that you were on was JAA property?
Yes, it was.
He was inside of the gate at the airport, correct?
He was inside of the property lines of the airport, yes.
You know, this time the state would seek to admit the application, into evidence. I believe without objection, the state's exhibit 1.
Mr. Friday, no objection? Okay, the amended states exhibit number 1. Just for the record, while we'll stop for a minute, is there an agreement that the video is going to be admitted into evidence?
There's no objection from the state, Your Honor.
Good. No, we'd ask you to do that.
Would that be your exhibit?
Yes, sir.
All right, so it'll be admitted as defendant's number 1 in evidence when we get done.
Yes, ma'am. He had some signs he had in his possession.
And when you approached, were the signs up, down?
It's difficult for me to recall exactly because the other officers had already been on the scene for a few minutes before I got there and had been talking with him. I do remember, as the video showed, that I handed him the application and he did accept it.
Now, at any time during your interaction with the defendant, did he ever state his purpose on the property?
No, ma'am.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay, any cross-examination, Mr. Frank?
Yes, Your Honor. First of all, it said you didn't state its purpose. Do people require to state their purpose when traveling down the road to a police officer just because they're asked?
No, sir.
You had Mr. Hoffman an application that's been submitted into evidence. Who approves those applications and denies those applications?
The airport administration.
So the airport administrator would be the person?
Administrator, it's above my pay grade. It's administrator, the director.
So you have no involvement in that?
No, sir.
So you don't know what permits are approved or denied?
No, sir.
You don't know whether they denied every permit that's ever been offered for a person to protest politically?
Don't know.
You ever seen protesters on the property before?
Yes, sir.
Where at?
Departing flights area. Upper level curb.
Up by the terminal.
Mhm.
And there's a free speech area there.
There's a designated area that the airport provides.
Are you aware of the reasons that the aviation authority lists why it might deny a person's permit if they're?
No, sir.
So you have no knowledge of what guidelines or rules the authority might use in denying a permit?
No, sir.
So you wouldn't know, for example, that they reserve the right to deny a permit because a person does not have an adequate amount of insurance?
No, sir.
And if they don't even define what an adequate amount of insurance is, you don't know anything about that, do you?
Not outside the gates.
And just so we're clear, you may use the phrase, or the state used the phrase, he was inside the gate of JAA. Let's make sure we're clear on exactly where he was. Was he in a secure area of the airport?
No, he wasn't.
You saw the video, right? You saw traffic moving by beside him. Was that traffic just general public traffic coming into the airport?
Yes, sir.
Is there any sign that says no traffic on this road unless you're stopping at the airport?
No, sir.
So that is an open, publicly traveled highway, isn't it?
Yes,
Or
sir.
roadway. Officer, do you ever enforce the traffic code?
Sir?
Do you ever enforce the traffic code?
We enforce traffic laws, yes, sir.
Okay. So you're familiar with chapter 316?
Yes, sir.
Does JAA have any special traffic rules just for JAA?
No, sir.
Do you know that the state preemption doesn't allow individual agencies to set up their own rules? Were you aware of that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are you familiar with the law regarding pedestrians walking the side roads where there are no sidewalks?
Couldn't quote it to you, but I'm somewhat familiar with it.
It is legal in the state of Florida to walk along the side of a publicly traveled road, generally publicly open road, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
So Mr. Hoffman, while walking down the side of the road, just walking down the side of the road didn't commit a crime, did he?
Not walking.
Didn't constitute any basis for you to issue a trespass warning, did it?
Yes, sir.
Him walking down the side of that road constituted a basis for a trespass.
Yes, sir. The video you provided clearly shows that he stopped and was stationary prior to the officer's arrival
So it's
for a period of time.
So it's your contention that if a person stops and stands in one place for more than how long, officer?
I don't have a time.
Can a person stop for 1 minute?
I don't have a time.
Can a person, okay. So just in your arbitrary discretion, when you decide a person's been standing there too long, you can issue them a trespass warning.
Based on prior knowledge and past experience, yes, sir.
And is that especially true if they're holding a sign that you don't appreciate?
It doesn't matter what kind of sign it is.
You've encountered Mr. Hoffman once before, haven't you?
Twice.
On those other locations, did you tell him that the side of the roadway there was public property on those other two occasions?
No, sir, I told him it was private property.
So you always told him it was private property?
Sir?
You always told him on each occasion it was private property?
Yes, sir.
Didn't you just hear after this morning video, I heard you say, I didn't tell you last time it was private property, this time I'm telling you it was private property?
I didn't tell him last time he was trespassing. I told him it was private property, and it's on the video.
Is JAA a public entity, officer?
I would object to legal conclusions. This is kind of the crux of a legal argument, asking a witness's opinion. His subjective opinion, to be honest, is irrelevant as to whether or not it's private or public. That's what we're here to argue for the court.
I tend to agree with you, Brian.
I'll rephrase the question, John.
Objection sustained.
Officer, were you aware that the state attorney's office has conceded in one of their filings that it is in fact?
Objection. It's argumentative and irrelevant to this witness.
Sustained.
I'll move on, Your Honor. On what basis did you inform Mr. Hoffman that this was private property?
On what basis?
Yes, sir.
Verbally?
Who told you this was private property?
The aviation authority has told me it was private property.
Who are the aviation authority?
I've been there 19 and a half years. I've heard it multiple times. I can't recall everybody that's told me.
Were there any other designated areas where somebody protests, for lack of a better word, other than the area of the terminal you've already described?
Not that I'm aware of. You would need to check with the aviation authority for that.
Just so clear, the area where Mr. Hoffman was located, it was up, how far from the overpass that begins the JAA property did you say he was?
How far from the overpass? I would say 300, 400 feet, 200 feet.
That's not a restricted area in any way.
Not as long as you're moving to the airport for business purposes.
Do you ever stop people at random as they're driving in to ask them if they're going to the airport for legitimate business purposes?
No, sir.
So why did you stop Mr. Hoffman?
Because he was stopped. He was standing on the side of the road within 5 feet.
Well, officer, I'm pretty sure I didn't see you pull up until after your other officers had already stopped him and kept him there. Isn't that right?
Correct.
So you don't know how long he was stopped before your officers arrived, do you?
No, sir, you just showed it to me on the video.
You mean the video where the camera was bouncing as he was walking backwards?
No, so the video where he was stopped stationary and the blue trombone and the heel was stationary for several minutes in your video.
Several minutes.
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, have we played the video?
Sure.
All right,
Let's stop. Sorry, we just can't see this for some reason.
My TV's off.
At the screen.
Got it.
Now, officer, I think I know what portion you're talking about. So I'm gonna get to there and see if this part that you're trying to describe. Is this the part you're describing, officer?
No, sir.
Not this part.
No, sir.
Farther down?
Over there.
Is this about where you're describing, officer?
Approximately.
Okay, let's go back. You tell me when you think Mr. Hoffman is no longer moving in a direction.
Right about now.
Okay? I stopped that at 15 minutes and 22 seconds. Does that look correct to you on the timer? Timer on the lower left-hand corner of the player?
I'm showing right-hand corner of 15, 19, 25.
Okay, that's the time of day, or approximately, I guess that's the time, the camera's time of day. We'll go with your thing. 15, that's 1500, 19 minutes and 25 seconds.
That's all.
Okay, I'm gonna start playing this officer, and I want you to tell me when you believe Mr. Hoffman starts moving again.
Your Honor, I'm going to object to this, because there's a whole line of cases that the video could be stopped during my objection, please, I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Brown. There's a whole line of cases that talk about when a witness was not present for the purpose of the video, commenting on a video that he wasn't there at the time. He can see what we can see. The point of going over this line of questioning is extremely argumentative. He testified several minutes. The defense counsel wants to argue it's not several minutes. Making us go through the exercise of going through the video is cumulative and not necessary. There's, like I said, there's a whole line of cases that talk about if a witness can't add to our understanding of the video because they weren't there, that it's cumulative in its objection. And so I would object to that, please.
Your Honor, it goes to Mr. Wall's credibility as well as his memory of the events of that day and what he was told by other persons. He testified, essentially he was told by other persons Mr. Hoffman had been still for some time. I think it's relevant for him for us to replay this segment of the video based on his testimony and see exactly how long he thinks Mr. Hoffman was standing still, because how long Mr. Hoffman was standing still is what he has testified as a basis for when he can issue a trespass warrant.
Your Honor, this doesn't go to impeach his memory because he wasn't there. If he has a question from other officers for how long that he was standing there or whatever, first of all, the video speaks for itself, so we can argue that. No witness can testify as to something where no one was there when we have a video. And if they want to testify what the officers, if he wants to question on what the officer did see, then perhaps the other officer that's here can question that officer. But to question this officer that wasn't there, and we have a video that shows it, we can argue that. Asking this witness doesn't matter, because it's on the video and he wasn't there. So it's cumulative, and it's argumentative.
Just for the record, what we're looking at, there are no officers there at all. The court is being played now. And basically, this witness is being asked to sit here and look at this and determine what the video recording reflects as the length of time, which frankly I can calculate. And so can Mr. Friday and so can Mr. Golden.
I can rephrase my question, Your Honor.
Okay, so that objection is sustained.
Officer, this is this, when you testified a moment ago that Mr. Hoffman stopped at some point, and that was the base point which he was no longer traveling along the roadway, correct? And this is the point you described.
This area.
So you didn't witness him stopping there that day, did you?
No, sir, I didn't. Your video provided that to me just a minute ago. I've not seen this video.
So you didn't have that information when you issued a trespass warrant to take you off? Sorry.
No, sir, we didn't. I didn't have this.
You just trespassed him, but you didn't want him on the airport property.
No, sir. The other officer trespassed him prior to my getting there.
Also, would it be fair to say that Mr. Hoffman's signs were expressing an idea of political nature?
He's free to hold whatever sign he wants to.
So if he had just been walking without holding signs, nobody would have bothered him from your department?
No, sir, but he was stopped. He was stationary when the officers arrived.
No further question, Your Honor.
Can you redirect?
Yes, sir. I appreciate the court's patience with the municipal prosecutors here. Sergeant, if you would, defense counsel asked if you stop cars for no reason that are driving through that area. If the car was stopped in the middle of the road and there was signage in the vehicle, would authorities from JA respond appropriately?
Yes, sir, we do respond to vehicles stopped in the road as well as on the side of the road to inquire if they're broken down, if they need assistance, or if they're just waiting.
Okay, and obviously if people are just walking through that area, using it as a regular thoroughfare and just walking through, you all stop those people and trespass those people?
No, so we do stop them from time to time and inquire if they need assistance or what their purpose is, but they will, I'll say, we'll use 9 out of 10 people are going to or from the airport to catch a flight or walk back to a motel.
Where's the facility on the airport where somebody can get an application or apply to be able to have a permit or what have you, to be able to demonstrate, hold signs, do things like that? Actually, let me back up a little bit. We went into a little bit before. There is an application process. If somebody wants to hold a sign, demonstrate what happened on the property, that's something that is allowable by the airport.
Yes, sir.
And do they, deny applications they don't like this, a certain point of view, to your knowledge?
Objection, on the witness already stated that he is not aware of how they process the application.
I assume that's what his answer is going to be now.
I don't know the process, no, sir.
Okay.
I just know there is an application process.
You know where a person goes in the airport to be?
To the 3-story administration building, as you're approaching the airport, it's to the left, approximately 200 yards from where we were at.
Okay, so if a person wanted to go to the application area from the route that the defendant was traveling, where would they go?
I'm sorry, can you make sure I
On the route
understand?
that the defendant was traveling, if a person wanted to apply to be able to have a permit, where would they go?
To the administration building.
Where was that in relation to where the defendant was walking?
It's on the opposite side of the road from where he's standing.
Across the street?
Across the street, yes, sir.
Okay.
Across that street. That's a one-way road coming into the airport. It's Yankee Clipper. It's a one-way road coming in. And it's on the opposite side of the road from where we approached him on the video.
Okay. Now, if a person has a valid permit, is there any way for you guys to know about that?
Yes, we're notified.
You're notified. If somebody's given a permit, you're notified.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so there's no way that the defendant would have had a valid permit and been on the side of the road and you not notified.
No, sir.
How are you notified?
We're notified via email from the Business Development Department or External Affairs, and they advise it's a ripple effect. It comes from our director to our lieutenants to the sergeants, and we administer that information to our officers.
Okay, so at the time that y'all was then approaching, and by the way, any of the officers that were involved in this case, would they have been similarly notified as well?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So when they came upon the defendant, they would have known that he did not have a permit to be there at that time.
Yes, sir.
And you mentioned that people have demonstrated at the airport before.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
How long have you been working for JA?
19 and a half years.
Okay. And over that time, when you open a number on how many times you've seen people demonstrating there?
25, 30
Okay.
times.
And that would be of a political, a religious nature? What sort of flavor? Or
It's a variety, a wide variety. It could be airlines. It could be personnel for the air carriers. It could be, sky caps. People demonstrating on the higher wages, or the airlines are protesting about something. If they have a strike nationwide, they obviously go to all the different airports. And the airport allows them to do that, allows them a position to do that. It's not completely out of the public viewer area, but it's not in the mainstream of things either.
based on your knowledge of this street right here that is shown on the video, can you describe that for me, if you will? Where does that street go into?
That particular road, Yankee Clipper, is a one-way, 3-lane, one-way road coming into the airport. And it allots you, from this location here, it allots you 3 or 4 different ways to go.
Okay, and so is that the place where anybody who's entering the airport, that's where they go?
That's one of the entrances, or one of the ways to come into the airport, yes. As I said, there's 2 or 3 different ways to approach the airport.
How much further up the road, you said it branches off? Does it like branch off, one for parking, one for terminal, like that kind of thing?
Yes, sir. It branches off to other roads going off of that road. But as you get closer to the airport, there are for parking, for motel, departing flights, return flights, rental car returns.
Okay. How much further up the road is this branching off?
I don't have tenths of a mile. I'd have to give you an approximate.
Yeah, right. I'm not asking for an exact measurement, but it's the best of your knowledge.
To the best of my knowledge, it's probably another half mile.
Another half mile, okay. All right, and is it in the direction that the defendant was walking half mile down roughly, or was it where the defendant was walking from, that is half a mile?
From where we made contact with him, the initial officer made contact with him, I would say it's approximately another half a mile up to where rental car lane and everything starts branching off.
Okay, so where we're looking at in the video right now, you saw the video in your other screen?
I still have more.
Is it in the direction that the camera's facing, or is it behind the camera?
No, it's behind the camera. He's facing this camera's facing oncoming traffic.
Based on the track, okay, perfect. Okay, I may have a little,
Yes, sir.
okay, nothing further on.
No, they exceeded the scope of crossfire that.
Oh, I'm not gonna object to a big cross. Yeah.
Oh, just so we're clear. The general direction of travel is shown on the video. It's towards the administration building.
Correct.
And Mr. Hoffman would have reached a place where he could cross the road to the administration building prior to reaching where all these roads branched off to.
There is no location for him to cross the road. It's not for pedestrian traffic.
There is not a pedestrian crossing, correct?
No.
Are there any pedestrian crossings anywhere across Yankee River Drive?
No, sir.
Are you aware of any provisions in state law that allow people to cross roads where there is no pedestrian crossing within a reasonable distance?
If they can cross the road safely,
So if he had reached next to the administration building and determined he could cross the road safely, he would have been moving in the right direction to get to that administration building.
had he been moving in that direction?
His general direction of movement throughout the video until you say he stopped was in that direction, wasn't it?
Yes, sir.
One question, you're not required to have a permit to walk down the road, only a permit to hold signs while walking down the road, is that correct?
Objection, legal conclusion, Your Honor.
I'm asking for your interpretation when you commit your trespass.
If you know.
Can you ask the question again, please?
Yes, sir. For you to issue a trespass warning, does a person need to have a permit to walk down the road? Can you trespass somebody for walking down the road without a permit?
No, sir. I can trespass somebody for not having business purposes at the airport who has stopped and standing along the side of the road.
So somebody standing there communicating an idea on the side of the road, passing motorists, is somebody you can trespass if they don't have a permit from the airport.
We ask them to go ahead and move along.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Any other questions?
No other questions.
Do you want him to remain outside?
Yes, please, Your Honor.
Okay, you step down, sir, and just remain outside. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yes, sir. State calls next witness.
The state calls Officer Jennifer Cruz.
Officer Cruz, please. Come forward, be sworn, please, ma'am.
Please raise your right hand. Do you promise to say the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yes.
Have a seat on the witness stand over here, please, ma'am.
Can you state your name
Officer Jennifer Cruz,
and your where are you employed?
at Jacksonville Aviation Authority Police Department
How long?
for 4 years.
I'm going to ask about the day that the video was taken that you watched. Were you one of the first officers to come to the scene where this occurred with Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Were you traveling alone in your own car, or were you riding along with the other officer we saw in the video?
I was traveling alone in my own vehicle.
And were you ahead of the other officer or behind him?
I don't recall.
That's-
I know we watched the video, but I don't recall.
When you pulled up, what observations do you have of Mr. Hoffman?
The observations that I remember from that day was that he was standing still and he was holding 2 signs.
What do the signs read?
If I remember correctly, I think one said F, the TSA, and the other one said police state.
And you and the other officer, did you approach Mr. Hoffman first?
I think that we approached him together.
And did Mr. Hoffman, when you approached, say anything?
Just, I guess, greeted us.
At any point, did Mr. Hoffman indicate that he was en route or traveling anywhere?
No.
Are you certain that when you came upon Mr. Hoffman, that he was in fact standing still?
That's what it appeared to me, that he was standing still. And I know we were dispatched to the call. We were dispatched to Yankee Clipper.
Okay, and when you were dispatched to that general location from which she was located?
Yes.
And I'm not familiar with Yankee Clipper.
Mhm.
However, my question is, how far ahead of you down Yankee Clipper can you see on this particular stretch? So for example, on a road that turns, you're not able to see what's around the corner, but on a straight road, you can see some distance ahead of you.
Right.
Were you able to see some distance ahead of you when you were approaching Mr. Hoffman in
Yes.
your vehicle?
Yes.
About how far?
About how far ahead? Like,
Yeah.
Towards the airport or?
No, towards him, like, how far in advance did you see him?
From the time that I guess came on the roadway, I probably saw him 100 feet ahead of me. I'm not real good with distance and
Oh, what about time? I mean, you see him and then it took you how long to get to him?
probably less than 3 minutes.
Okay, so within that less than 3 minute time frame, was there any movement or relocation of Mr. Hoffman?
No.
So he remained in the same place that he was from the moment that you were able to see him
Yes.
and your vehicle arriving to the scene. There was no movement whatsoever.
No.
And from the moment that you were able to see him from your vehicle, did you see that he was holding anything?
Saw the signs.
Okay, so you saw the signs from the moment that you were able to see him.
Correct.
And at any point did he put the signs down?
I don't recall if he put them down when we approached him, but not as I was traveling to him, no.
So, so just to be clear, so as far as you can remember, the around or less than 3 minutes that you were able to see Mr. Hoffman until the point where you encountered him outside of your vehicle, he may have been holding up the signs, but he definitely had not moved.
Correct.
And can you clarify, please, how was he holding his signs?
I would assume like this.
Okay. Let the record reflect that she has her arms above her head. So he was not carrying them like he would, a bag of groceries.
No.
He had them held up above his head.
Yes.
And one last question. As far as your time working as a police officer for JAA, if there was a vehicle stopped on the side of the road, and let's say in the area that Mr. Hoffman was standing, would you be called to approach the vehicle?
Yes.
And what would be your standard interaction if somebody were in the vehicle?
Usually our standard interaction is to make sure the vehicle isn't broken down, but most of the time when we encounter people on the side of the road there, it's because they're not sure where the courtesy waiting lot is, and they're waiting to pick up someone at the airport.
And at any point, if they communicate with you that they are in fact trying to get, to move forward for the, to catch an airplane, for the facilitation of air traffic, you allow them to move forward, correct?
Yes.
No further questions, John?
All right, let's cross the other way.
Officer Cruz, you said that you saw Mr. Hoffman standing still for less than 3 minutes.
Just from
Officer Cruz, you said you saw Mr. Hoffman standing still for less than 3 minutes, correct?
That was an approximation from the time that I saw him and approached him.
Was it less than 2?
I don't recall.
Would seeing video again help refresh your recollection?
And if you want me to watch the video again, sure.
Officer, I want you to tell me when you think you can see your vehicle approaching Mr. Hoffman here.
Okay.
You see a vehicle yet, officer?
No, I do not.
See it yet?
No.
Is that your vehicle, officer?
That is my vehicle.
Just hold back up just a little bit here. Is that it? We're seeing just coming around the corner?
Yes.
Okay, so we're at 3:20 and 23 seconds by the clock on the camera, right?
Yes.
So let's go from 3:20 and 23 seconds and see how long it takes you to get to pull up to Mr. Hoffman.
Here we go.
So I got that to about 20 seconds before he says, here we go.
Correct, but I'd like to state for the record, from the time I was dispatched and traveling on Dixie Clipper and made a U-turn under the overpass to come back around on Yankee Clipper to make contact with him, that was probably about 3 minutes.
During that 3 minutes, did you see Mr. Hoffman standing still, Officer Cruz?
Yes, I did.
During that 3 minutes, you saw him standing still?
From the time that I visually saw him from Dixie Clipper, he did not move. And then by the time I traveled up under the overpass and came back around on Yankee Clipper, he was still standing in the same place.
So you saw him before that 3:23 and 20 seconds?
Correct,
And how did you see him before that?
because I was traveling on the other side of the roadway on Dixie Clipper Drive.
Okay, and you couldn't tell that he had appreciably moved from where you thought you saw him as you were driving around?
He was still in the same general area.
Same general area?
Correct.
You can't testify he was standing in the exact same spot?
Not in the same exact spot, but in the same general area.
You can't testify that he didn't take a 30-second break and then take another step, and 30-second break and another step came?
I'm not sure what you're asking me, sir. I was dispatched to an area and he was in the same general area I was dispatched to.
What was that dispatch call for?
For someone standing on the side of the road with signs.
Okay. So he was holding signs up like this with both hands. Where was the camera he was holding?
From what I remember that day, he had 2 cameras attached to his person, and he also had one in his hand.
So where was the one that was in his hand if he was holding those signs up like this, Officer Cruz?
That's a question you have to ask your defendant.
So when you pulled up, he's holding both hands like this.
That's what I recall.
Well, officer, there are 2 cameras that have been played today. One is the Sony cam, the handheld, right?
Correct.
The other is the body cam, one of the body cam. Because you were present when the state attorney's office and I downloaded the videos off those cameras, weren't you?
Yes.
And you remember that we had one of the body cams he was wearing that didn't have anything on it, you remember that?
Yes.
And so you remember that one of the cameras we've been showing from today is the Sony cam and one is the body cam.
Yes.
And that Sony cam has to be held in somebody's hand, doesn't it?
Does the Sony Cam not have a strap where you can hold it on your hand and hold something else in your hand at the same time?
So he was holding the Sony cam like this with the sign up, is that your testimony, Officer Cruz?
I don't recall, sir.
Where were you when you were dispatched to office, or when you were dispatched to your office location?
I don't recall where I was exactly at the time I was dispatched.
Was there any profanity on Mr. Hoffman's signs, or were there underlines in place of certain letters? Do you remember?
I know that it said F question mark K, the TSA.
Okay. So he tried to make it as family friendly as he could, so I'll specify that.
You actually called for speculation.
It's just saying.
Also, Jack mischaracterizing F question mark K as family friendly as well.
Officer Cruz, do you have any involvement or knowledge regarding the process that happens when somebody submits an application to engage in protest at JAA property?
Can you repeat the question?
Do you have any knowledge as far as what happens once somebody submits the application to JAA? Do you know who makes the decision about whether or not the permit is granted?
No, I do not.
Do you know the process they go through?
No, I do not.
Do you know what rules and regulations or guidelines they have for who does or doesn't get a permit?
No, I do not.
No further questions.
Can you redirect?
Yes, sir. There was a lot of questioning about the manner in which the defendant was holding the sign. Really, the main point is this. When you saw the defendant at all times, was he simply carrying these signs in a manner commensurate with somebody just carrying something? Or was he displaying the sign?
The signs were displayed. I don't remember exactly how he was holding them, but they were displayed.
Anything else to this witness, Mr. Frank?
I have nothing further, Your Honor. Just prepared to close the arguments.
Okay. Can this witness be excused as well as your other witness?
Yes, sir.
You're excused, ma'am. You're welcome to stay if you want to, but you're excused. Mr. Frank, it's your motion, so I'll let you go ahead and proceed, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just seeing the internet for the clerk.
Yeah, that'll be, as we indicated previously, that he's done the thing with that.
Okay, case in point. Your Honor, I believe the state provided you with the same case the state provided you with.
I've got a stack of cases, I don't know what they provided you with, and I haven't, obviously had an opportunity to read these, but I do have a stack of cases here. Yes.
As long as you've got that, they're basically the same cases. I have copies of for you, so we'll just.
Okay.
Please, the court. Yes, sir. Your Honor, one quote I really like is you're entitled to your own opinion, but not your own facts. But in a motion to dismiss, the state gets its own facts to its reverse. And their facts have to be accepted by the court. But they're not entitled to their own conclusions of law, those are for the court to make. And there are no disputes of material fact here. Everything in dispute is a question of law. In one breath, the state agrees that JAA is a public entity in the reverse, despite all the protesting. I think I counted 5 different times, or 6 different times, Mr. Hoffman was told it was private property. In the next breath, the state claims that the area where Mr. Hoffman was located is not a traditional public forum. The state fails to cite any case that holds that the side of the street is not a traditional public forum, despite numerous cases that say it is the quintessential public forum. State attempts to claim its regulation is content neutral because it provides an outlet if one only seeks the permission of the airport authority. And says that because JAA regulations have more limitations and reasons for denial than the Burke case, where the 11th Circuit struck down a permit requirement, that they're less arbitrary. And Your Honor, a direct report to the Burke case. It involves a case out of the 11th Circuit. Your Honor may be familiar that for years there have been protests at Augusta National Golf Course during the Masters. Well, the city of Augusta got tired of Ms. Burke and her protesters, and so they passed a statute. Ms. Burke took it to the 11th Circuit. The 11th Circuit made clear, requiring a permit to stand on public property in protest is a prior restraint and is not permissible. Despite the state's denial, this case is exactly like Juice for Jesus. Except in the Juice for Jesus case, the public authority was honest about what it was doing. They admitted we were banning all speech and creating basically a First Amendment free zone. The airport wasn't allowed to do it. The court said, hey, the terminal, that's fine. You have business to conduct. Where you have business to conduct, that is the operation of government. That is not a traditional public forum. But the court didn't allow them to extend that to the streets and sidewalks leading up to here. JAA wants to argue that, again, back to changing, that they're different from Jews for Jesus and different from Burke because they have well-established grounds on which a permit can be denied. I want to direct the court's attention to page 5 of the JAA regulations. The state's argument is, well, JAA has 17 regulations, and that takes all arbitrariness out of it, it takes all capriciousness out of it, and it gives an objective standard. Your Honor, the ones I'm going to read are anything but objective. Number 1 on page 5, A1. These are reasons that these are reasons that the authority, the entity is the person seeking the permit. These are reasons the authority can reject an application for protesting or anything else. 1, the entity for any reason does not fully meet the qualification standards and requirements established by the authority. Which requirements, which qualifications or other standards, it doesn't really say. Number 2, the proposed use of the airport will create a safety or security hazard. All they have to do is say it does. Number 4, the proposed use may result in a financial loss or hardship to the authority. All they have to do is say that it may, not have to show it. Skipping down to number 12, the entity does not demonstrate financial capacity or responsibility to undertake the proposed use of the airport. And 13, the entity cannot obtain a bond or insurance in the type and amounts required by the authority for the proposed use of the airport. Your Honor, the very thing that was struck down in Burke was the fact that they required this Burke to get an indemnity policy in an amount satisfactory to the county attorney in order to protest. That is the exact same thing the JAA is requiring people to do here in order to get a permit. Moving on to 15, the entity's proposed use of the airport has been or could be detrimental to the authority, the airport, the lessees, sub-lessees, operators, permittees, or users. Number 16, the entity seeks terms and conditions which are inconsistent with the authority's policies and or is stated in a request for qualifications and or proposals issued by the authority. And finally, Your Honor, the very definition of arbitrary, discretion, and content, the entity's interest and or the proposed use are inconsistent with the authority's mission, values, goals, objectives, the best interest of the authority, or airport sponsor assurances. The state argues that this is a content regulation, this is a reasonable time, place, and manner. Your Honor, those restrictions that I just read off are nothing but arbitrary restrictions subject to enforcement on the whim. This is not a content neutral restriction, it is a wholesale ban on all speech except that explicitly approved of by JAA at their discretion. Which brings us to the Catrone case. The Catrone case is a case out of St. Petersburg. There, the city was doing something very similar to what the airport attempts to do here. The difference is, the city there actually passed an ordinance to allow their officers to trespass people from public sidewalks and public parks. Here, the airport officers just do it because somebody told them they could. They don't remember who. In the Catrone case, the state said it's okay for us to issue these trespass warnings, and it doesn't violate due process because there is a due process procedure that if the person refuses to abide by the trespass warning, effectively an injunction, they can be arrested, and then they can challenge that in court, just like we are here today. But the 11th Circuit said that's not good enough. The court's answer was, we are not persuaded that this state forum, hearing on after being arrested, affords sufficient procedural protections. The process available in state court is beside the point. A challenge to the charge of trespass is not a challenge against the issuance of what is effectively an injunction, in this case against Mr. Hoffman's liberty interest. The controlling court also had a few other interesting statements to make. An individual's decision to remain in a public place of his choice is as much part of his liberty interest, or, excuse me, as much part of his liberty as the freedom of movement inside frontiers that is a part of our heritage, or the right to move to whatsoever place one's own inclination may direct. The court went on to say, citing a few other Florida cases, that all Florida citizens have a right, under the Florida Constitution, to chat on the public street, stroll aimlessly, and saunter down the sidewalk. Your Honor, what the state is doing here is nothing more than a restriction on Mr. Hoffman's First Amendment right to walk down the side of the road as provided in Chapter 316 Florida Traffic Code, where it states pedestrians are allowed to walk on the shoulder of a generally available highway. And Sergeant Wall testified. Generally, the public is allowed to travel up and down this road at will. Mr. Hoffman, Your Honor, was singled out, not because he didn't go get a permit that he shouldn't have to get in the first place, but because of what the sign said. The state also relies on the fact that Mr. Hoffman didn't tell the officers that he was going to do a public records request. He doesn't have to. We all have a right not to answer those type of questions. If I'm walking down the street, it is nobody's business, especially the law enforcement officer's business, where I'm choosing to go. If they ask a question and it's a consensual encounter, I can say I choose not to answer and I can walk away. They didn't let Mr. Hoffman continue walking in the direction he wanted to go. They never offered him that option. They never said, Mr. Hoffman, you can't stand here. You can move, but you can't stand here. If you want to keep moving in the direction you're going, go right ahead, have a nice day. We may even hold traffic for you to cross the street. No, they didn't do that. They said, get off this property, this is private property. Your Honor, the Supreme Court already answered that question. In the case of Jackson Shaw versus the Airport Authority, Jackson Shaw Company versus Jacksonville Aviation Authority, the 11th Circuit certified to the Florida Supreme Court a question about dealing with the airport and what its obligations were as a public entity. And the court starts out, the very start of its opinion, is that the Jacksonville Aviation Authority is unquestionably a public entity, and that makes its property public property. And while the Supreme Court has restricted, while the Supreme Court has allowed public property owners in their landlord capacity to restrict a person's First Amendment rights in certain locations, such as at the terminal in the Harry Christian case or the Jews for Jesus case, they have never allowed that restriction to extend beyond the terminal boundaries or beyond the administrative offices. It's also important to note in the video. I guess the court's going to have to go back and look at it again because there's some dispute about whether or not Mr. Hoffman stopped.
Obviously, I will.
Yes. Our position is clear that if Mr. Hoffman stopped at any point, and we do acknowledge there were 2 points where he clearly had stopped for a moment. Stopping to take a break, because you can hear him breathing heavy on the video, I think. Stopping to take a break should not subject you to a trespass on public property just because you're holding a couple of signs. The state wants to say, hey, we've got all the elements here, we've got everything we need to survive a motion to dismiss. They forgot one thing. The person directing the other person to leave under the trespass statute actually has to have the authority to issue that warrant. In the case of a private property owner, it's not a big deal. That property owner or his designee can anytime say that they want somebody off the property. But when we're dealing with a governmental officer, a police officer, an officer of the city of Florida, that officer cannot violate the Constitution and then use that as a basis for a criminal charge. The state says Mr. Hoffman had ample opportunity to leave. Ample opportunity is meaningless if the order is in violation of the Constitution and not lawful in the first instance. Your Honor, this entire prosecution is a farce. The law is established that the streets, including the sides of the streets, are open for the passage of all, including Michael Hoffman, including people like Mr. Hoffman who can hold signs and communicate ideas in what Central Public Court. We ask the court to dismiss the charges in this case, void the trespass warning issued by JAA, and tell the state once again that the First Amendment does still have meaning and people are still free to walk on the side of the road. Thank you.
Thank you, Friday. State Attorney, please.
May it please the court?
Yes, ma'am.
The state is relying on state v. Presume, where we filed a traverse for the motion to dismiss, and there, we specifically denied a material fact concerning whether or not Mr. Hoffman was in fact standing or was in fact en route. We are specifically denying defendant's facts in paragraph 3 of his motion. The state's contention is that the defendant, in fact, was not en route to obtain public records, but was standing, picketing, or protesting on the side of the road. In addition, in reference to the due process argument that was brought up in the Catron v. City of St. Petersburg case, the government there held that the court held there that the government must provide notice and an opportunity at a meaningful time in a meaningful manner, although the notice and hearing may be postponed until after the deprivation. Here, there is no due process issue, because a warning was given to Mr. Hoffman of the proper procedure to receive permission to be on the property for the purposes of picketing or protesting, demonstrating, or other similar acts. The defendant was given ample opportunity to leave or continue on his route, but he refused. And addressing the traditional public forum argument, the state is agreeing that JAA, the Jacksonville Aviation Authority, is a quasi-government entity. So their property that they own, we will concede that is public. However, it is not a traditional public forum. The Kershaw case, which was referred to earlier, stated that the court determined that airports are not traditional public forums, and therefore the regulations need only be reasonable, and that an airport is not a traditional public forum. The property the defendant was on is owned by the JAA for the purposes of facilitating air travel, thus not a public forum. A traditional public forum has been held to be property that has a principal purpose, the free exchange of ideas. However, the property the defendant was on, JAA's regulations promote safety and only regulate the areas of JAA property that it considers unsafe, i.e. the roadway. The roadway is JAA property. However, it's still a non-public forum. Therefore, the JAA is entitled to have regulations on time, place, and manner, so long as they are viewpoint neutral and content neutral, and so long as they don't chill any more speech than necessary. The regulations here, which were pointed out, are viewpoint neutral, are content neutral, and in addition, Mr. Hoffman never even attempted to file the application so that he would have no standing in which to argue or challenge the constitutionality of JAA's regulations. In addition, those regulations, however, do provide for alternative channels. As we heard today, JAA does allow for people to come on property. Time, place, manner restrictions are placed, but they are reasonable and they're not so overbroad where they allow unfettered discretion for somebody to deny on whatever basis they feel necessary. There are 17 different purposes for denying an application. Finally, the application simply requires that the applicant agree to bind the provisions of the JAA rules and regulations. And again, there is not unbridled discretion given. It delineates specific reasons an application may be denied. We ask the court to deny the defendant's motion to dismiss.
Mr. Davis, let me ask you one question. Is the state's, because I want to make sure I've got your position correct. is it the state's position that JAA is a quasi-governmental authority, but the piece of property that Mr. Hoffman was standing on the side of the roadway is public property?
All of JA property is going to be public property because they are a quasi-government entity.
Okay.
However,
But I understand the rest of your argument, but you agree that the JAA, the airport, and including where Mr. Hoffman was, public property?
yes,
Okay. But it's also your position that JAA has the authority to regulate property,
because
right?
it's a non-public forum, and airports have intended to be non-public forums, and therefore they are entitled to have regulations that are content neutral, viewpoint neutral, that regulate time, place, and manner, which they do, and they are content neutral and viewpoint neutral, and they don't give unfettered discretion to one single person to deny arbitrarily a application. There are rules, there are guidelines, and they are not in violation of any constitutional right. They are exactly in line with what the court deems to be reasonable for regulations when it comes to restricting a non-public forums area for people to express their freedom of expression.
Sure. Thank you.
Your Honor, if I may as well, I just wanted to add that specifically the airport had a specific location for people who want to protest that was testified to. In this case, you have somebody who's holding up signs in a place where people enter onto the airport, just a little distance away from where, it's a one-way entrance. People are entering, trying to find out where to go in terms of branched off in the parking lot, airport, what have you. So there's a reasonable reason to have these regulations, including not having people holding up signs at that particular location. So just to add to the reasonableness of the procedures they have in place, the place where the defendant was holding up and displaying these signs was in a place that causes a safety risk to motorists coming in. And it was on the airport property at the time, which, as mentioned earlier, is a non-traditional public forum to be expressing those views.
Perfect. Thank you.
Briefly, Your Honor. First of all, Your Honor, no evidence was presented to be a particular safety hazard. The man was standing across the street from another flashing sign that was changing its message that we saw on video. So JAA themselves has put a sign right near where he was standing, flashing messages moving. The question of whether Mr. Hoffman was standing or was still around is immaterial to the question before the court. As the court Cantrone said, you have the right to saunter or wander aimlessly. I think that would necessarily include stopping for a moment. Your Honor, I don't have a case because I had not quite understood that the state's argument today was going to be this issue of standing versus continuing to move. But I will tell the court, on behalf of the provider of supplemental authority, the court needs it. There's a recent case out of the Ferguson protest, where the police officers in Ferguson, Missouri, were telling protesters, you have to keep moving, you have to keep moving, you can't stand still for more than so many minutes. And the federal court there said, no, that is impermissible. You're violating people's First Amendment rights when they're walking on the sidewalks by telling them they can't stop and stand.
If you want to send me that case and make sure the state has it as well, that's fine.
Yes, sir. Your Honor, the next issue is the state has blatantly miscited both the Harry Christian case and the Jesus case. I point the court first to the lead case where it says that regulation governs only the terminal. The Port Authority permits solicitation and distribution on the sidewalks outside the terminal buildings. Both the lead case and the Jesus case repeatedly point to the fact that the terminal is different from the streets and sidewalks leading into the airport. They don't say that the airport is not a traditional public forum. They say the airport terminal is not a traditional public forum. They wanted to talk about Catrone and the notice of opportunity for a hearing after the deprivation. Again, they're arguing exactly what the city of Catrone argued. Mr. Hoffman was given a warning. He was given ample opportunity to leave, and he didn't. Because, Your Honor, the reason it violated due process of Catrone, the reason it violated due process have a method. They said it could be after the fact, that's fine. But there's no method in the airport regulations, and Mr. Hoffman was not informed of any method of who he could talk to have this trespass one employee. Had they had some type of method, they might have survived. If this court finds reasonableness standard for either their safety regulations, their protest and picketing regulations, or any other regulations we talked about here today, it is undeniable that the court must apply strict scrutiny. We have a traditionally public forum, the side of the street. We have a person who's clearly engaged in political speech, and we have regulations that provide for a great deal of discretion that we credit the court. Those things add up to one thing only, and that is the scrutiny standard. The state has not shown any compelling interest or compelling narrative reason why the rules that they want Mr. Hoffman to follow are constitutional. Instead, they argue about whether he's a standing still or walking. It doesn't matter, Your Honor. All that matters is that Mr. Hoffman was engaged in political speech on the side of the road when he said the public forum. Thank you.
Mr. Gold, do you have something else? Did you have something to add?
Yes, I did, if I may, Your Honor, be very brief.
Yes.
I did want to mention, because it may have gotten lost just in all the argument, as far as the rules of traverse are concerned, I mean, I think Your Honor knows that once it's been traversed, the motion has to be denied. And in this case, we filed traverse. We have a factual dispute. This is not something where facts are not in dispute. So as a procedural matter, this motion should be denied simply for that reason. So when the defense said there is no disagreement as to fact, that's not correct. We filed a traverse. Traverse the facts. And so, the court doesn't even need to go into all this other analysis. Motion to dismiss has to be denied if you don't have an agreement on the facts. And that's in our file traverse. Additionally, I agree that this case doesn't stand or fall whether or not the defendant was standing or walking, whatever. The main part, and really the only reason why standing has anything to do with anything, is to show that this isn't somebody who's just walking through, this isn't somebody who's just using the streets for travel purposes. It's the standing in conjunction with displaying a sign. And, it's possible that the defendant could have been moving along very slowly with the sign. That wouldn't have changed the analysis at all. The whole point of bringing up standing or walking or what have you was only to show that his purpose there was to hold the sign, not to use the streets for any other purpose. It was there to demonstrate. And there was a process that he put in place for him to be able to demonstrate. If he wanted to, he didn't bother to go through that process. So whether or not the process the defense thinks is sufficient or not, the defendant never actually went and did any of that process and got denied anything. So for defense to get up here and speculate that the airport is simply discriminating against people because they don't like what they say, nobody knows that because the defendant never actually went to the bottom to attempt to get a permit. So he really doesn't have standing to object to those procedures in place because he never went through them, he was never denied or anything of the sort. And this whole argument that maybe he was on his way to the permit place because it was in that direction. It doesn't really matter because the whole point is he needs to get the permit first. You get the permit first, then you demonstrate. That's how it's supposed to be done. So that's the state's argument.
The Burke case does address the standing issue. You don't have to apply for an unconstitutional permit in order to challenge the unconstitutional permitting process. That's never been required in the Burke Amendment context. I'm not aware of that. As to the traverse issue, Your Honor, we'll accept the facts. The state's facts is set forth in their traverse is truly correct for the purpose of this hearing. But even their facts as alleged in their traverse don't add up to a valid trespass point to Mr. Hoffman because they didn't have the authority to trespass him in the first place, and therefore there could be no arrest for trespass or prosecution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And obviously, I'm going to take this motion under advisement. A couple things before we move on. Mr. Friday provided me right at the very beginning with JAA rules and regulations, and he referred to them in his argument. Does the state object, it hasn't been admitted evidence, does the state object to me having these, reading these?
No, in fact, it was our understanding that that would be an evidence on the judicial notice or an evidence.
We actually, my oral motion was for the
Judicial notice, I'll take judicial notice, like, everybody agrees these are the rules that
Yes.
apply. Okay, I'll just take judicial notice of these. The second thing is, obviously, this motion is a little bit out of the ordinary. It's not the standard motion to dismiss, motion to suppress. I feel like I need to do some research, consider it, and not make a spur of the moment ruling. Having said that, the arrest date apparently is August 12th, and I don't want to run into a speedy trial issue. So the next question is, Mr. Friday, is speedy trial going to be an issue? Is your client going to waive it? Or do I need to make a very fast decision on what's a complicated issue and just set this case for trial?
Your Honor, I have not discussed the speedy trial issue with my client. If I might discuss it with him.
Yes, sir. I just realized it today when I looked at the hearing.
Your Honor, you tell me the speedy trial date to run? Or you tell me when the speedy trial will run?
We just got over 10th.
Yeah, 90 days from.
Your Honor, Mr. Walton has no objection to waiver of speedy trial. Of course, we may file a speedy trial request at a later date.
I understand. If you would then sign the waiver, please, and have the client sign it.
Your Honor, obviously, given the complexity of the issues as well, if either side wanted to supplement the record, then you would have a week to supplement the record with a memorandum of law. Would that be something that would be okay for Your Honor?
I think it would absolutely be okay. Not only that might be helpful. I think I've got your positions, but I certainly wouldn't mind having both of them in a more formal form. Is a week enough? Mr. Friday, Mr. Golden, Mr. Hernandez?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, by next Friday.
Okay, so Halloween, October 31st,
Yes, Your Honor.
by the end of business?
Yes, sir. That would be fine. Thank
Okay.
you.
So, any memorandums, and obviously I know you, counsel, will copy those for you. So any memos due to be filed by the end of business, October 31st. If you want to copy me on those, that's fine. If you don't want to, what I am going to ask counsel to do, because I've run into issues with this in the past, not too often, but mostly in civil cases, frankly, where counsel files some sort of motion or response, they don't work in my office. I don't check every single case I've got every day. I've got, between civil and criminal, I've got over 1,500 cases probably. So if you don't send me a hard copy, if you would alert me that it's been an e-file, then I can just pull it up on the cord and read it. Either way is fine with me. I'm just asking you to alert me to it if you're not going to send me a hard copy.
Now, do you tell us the proper email address to send this to?
Pardon me?
Do you want us to email you a hard copy? Do you want to drop off a hard copy, or do you want us to email you a copy?
Either way is fine.
What's your email address?
It wouldn't be mine.
Okay.
And frankly, I probably prefer the hard copy,
Okay.
but if you want to email it,
I'll do the hard copy now.
yeah, but I can give you my, in case there's an issue that comes up, my JA's email address is pfields, F-I-E-L-D-S, @coj.net. And that's where anything would go, not directly to me.
Your Honor,